Ethio Telecom, the only telecom operator in Ethiopia until very recently, has been a cornerstone of the nation's communication infrastructure. For years it held a monopoly, providing essential services to millions of Ethiopians. However, the winds of change began to blow, signaling a new era for the company and the country. In late 2024, Ethio Telecom made a groundbreaking move. They decided to sell a chunk of the company to the public. This process, known as an initial public offering or IPO, was a significant milestone. It marked the first time that shares of this telecom giant would be available to everyday citizens. This IPO was a monumental event for Ethiopia. For the first time, everyday Ethiopians had the opportunity to own a piece of this giant company. It wasn't just about buying shares. It was about being part of a historic moment in the nation's economic development. Ethio Telecom aimed to raise a substantial amount of money through this IPO, 30 billion birr to be exact. The funds were intended to fuel the company's growth, allowing it to expand its services and infrastructure even further. The IPO was open for several months, running from October 2024 to February 2025. This extended period gave potential investors ample time to consider their options and make informed decisions. The response was overwhelming. Over 47,000 people seized the opportunity to become Ethio Telecom shareholders. This massive turnout demonstrated the public's confidence in the company's future and their eagerness to be part of its journey. That's a lot of new investors. The enthusiasm was palpable, with people from all walks of life eager to invest in a company that had been a part of their daily lives for so long. These new shareholders collectively purchased a total of 10.7 million shares. This significant number of shares indicated strong public interest and a robust belief in the company's potential for growth. However, there was a catch. Only Ethiopian citizens were allowed to buy shares in this initial offering. This restriction ensured that the benefits of the IPO would primarily go to the local population, fostering national economic growth. Additionally, there were limits on how much each person could invest. This measure was put in place to ensure a fair distribution of shares and to prevent any single individual from gaining too much control. You couldn't just go and buy 1 million birr worth of shares. The most you could spend was 1 million birr. This cap was designed to democratize the investment process, making it accessible to a broader segment of the population. When all the numbers were added up, it became clear that Ethio Telecom had fallen short of its ambitious financial targets. Ethio Telecom didn't reach its goal. The company had set a high bar, but the final figures were disappointing. They only raised 3.2 billion birr, which was far below expectations. That's just a little over 10% of what they were hoping for. The gap between the target and the actual revenue was significant. Remember that Ethio Telecom is a massive company with extensive operations and a large workforce. Their total assets are worth a whopping 300 billion birr, making them one of the largest companies in the region. So, even though 3.2 billion birr sounds like a lot of money, in the grand scheme of things, it's actually a small fraction of what the company is worth. This shortfall highlights the challenges they face in meeting their financial goals. Ethio Telecom's CEO, Fantahun Tamiru, had some thoughts on why the IPO didn't go as planned. During a recent press conference, she elaborated on the various factors that contributed to the underperformance. She pointed to a few key reasons that were critical in understanding the outcome. First, limiting the sale to Ethiopian citizens meant that a huge pool of potential investors, like big international companies, couldn't buy in. This restriction significantly reduced the amount of capital that could have been raised. Second, the limits on how much each person could buy also restricted how much money they could raise. These caps prevented larger individual investments, which could have boosted the overall funding. Third, excluding institutional investors like pension funds meant missing out on large investments. These entities typically invest substantial amounts, and their absence was felt. Lastly, he believes many people didn't even know about the IPO. The lack of awareness was a significant barrier. There wasn't enough advertising or information available to the public. Without proper marketing, many potential investors were left in the dark, unaware of the opportunity. So, what happens to all those unsold shares? Ethio Telecom says they're not giving up. They plan to try and sell them again, but they haven't said exactly when or how they'll do it. They're talking to the government to figure out the best way to move forward. One thing is for sure, they still believe in the power of sharing ownership with the Ethiopian people. They're just going to have to tweak their strategy a bit.